Good evening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus. My name is Faraz Patel on the Saturday night, of course, bringing you content ahead of the holiday season. Now, the Islamic school phenomenon in South Africa started around just before the dawn of democracy, when Muslim communities across the country felt that the state had embarked on a more secular ideology for educational institutions. And this paved the way for faith-based institutions to head towards matric, but in a manner following the integration of Islamic studies like Quran, fiqh, aqaid, and etc. Children attending Islamic schools would now spend the day without having to finish late. Madrasas would now be incorporated into the curriculum in tandem with other subjects. The educational landscape changed from curriculum 550 to OBE and then to NCS, which changed later to RNCS. Finally, we had the CAPS syllabus. We are here to discuss this, and joining me, I'd like to welcome Mahomed Ayeed Karodia, who is the CEO of the Institute of Alternate Development. Assalamu alaikum, MS, and Jazakallah so much for joining us.
Wa alaikum salam. What a pleasure to you and to your viewers. For us, it's always an honor listening to you and being on your program. How are you, my brother?
Gee, alhamdulillah, and yourself. No, Jazakallah so much for joining us, MS. MS, I think let's start off, of course, with the expanding upon the Bella Bill for our viewers so that they know exactly what it entails and what the impact would be on our youth. Could you maybe expand on that, please?
Farad, in fact, it's actually not a bill anymore. It's an act. Actually,
yes,
it has been passed. It's in Parliament, alhamdulillah, and it has been promulgated. The Bella Bill is the Basic Education Law Act. It actually gives the government more power to control education. And we must remember, Farhad, that we are in a secular country. This country does not, in the public schools, espouse the use of any religion, because we must remember we had actually what is called Act 37 Act 39 of 1967, which made it very clear at that time that if you went to school before democracy, that you had to follow a Christocentric education. That has moved away because the state has become very secular in its approach. And the Bella Act sounds like a death knell for many communities, in the sense that, one, we know it reintroduced sexuality education into school. And there was a huge hoo-ha. We're still going on with it. It's the rainbow colors and all that stuff here that they talk about. So there was a huge uproar, but the bill has been passed, and this is how it affects people. Now, for many years, we find that homeschooling was a very, very important choice for parents. Here I'm referring to Muslim parents. Not that I'm sectional, I'm going to try to focus on Muslim parents mainly. A Muslim parent would put the child, let's say, in a homeschooling situation and give them online tuition if they were sufferers from ADD, ADHD, they were claustrophobic, or they were autistic, or they had some issues. And so this child needed to be in a one-on-one situation without a lot of children around this child. And alhamdulillah, this changed because after COVID, you must remember, online became the new normal. Actually, universities, although COVID is over, still use online to do the exams and so on. This brings us back to the point of homeschooling. So this is how the Bella Bill affected homeschooling. Number one, we have actually a lot of tuition centers. We used to call them homeschooling tuition centers. We had a lot of them, especially in the rural towns where, for example, like in Ermelo, there would be, for example, a lady, Mrs. Tayyab or Mrs. Tayyab, who had a particular set of children. She would provide education for them from grade R to grade whatever it is, and she would be looking after the education. That has stopped now. The government has actually banned that. There are no tuition centers. There are no online schools available. And this is the summary of it. Number one, homeschooling is totally the prerogative now of the parent. For us, if you have, let's say, a child who's in grade R and you want to do homeschooling, you have to ensure that Faraz Patel and his wife, number one, they provide the child with the CAPS syllabus, proper assessments at home. You must register the child with the provincial department here. So it actually has affected the Muslim communities in a large way because remember, we have quite a significant number of children who are doing HIFZ classes and anima courses and so on. And it was by choice that, becoming a Hafiz al-Quran is a very important aspect of our deen. And for example, now these centers is to cater for these children. And unfortunately, that has stopped now. Homeschooling is the prerogative directly of the parent. No more can a company or a tuition center provide homeschooling.
MS, I want to touch on this the plan to overcome the challenges presented by this act, and how your institute, being an IED, plans for it to occur.
Alhamdulillah. So what we did is that we organized a rescue plan, because I said, you know what, the most important thing that as Muslims we must understand that we live in a country, it's multicultural, but we must follow the laws of the country. So we took, and our advocates and our legal team and my directorate, together with I'll talk about them just now, about TGI. Just remember the name TGI. We sat with it together, and we said, we looked at the bills and the law, and we said, never mind. Number one, we can rescue all these home centers because we will be able to register every child with the department. Because IAD, the Institute for Alternate Development, is a resource provider. We are not an online school. Yes, our modality is by streaming, by internet. Okay, we understand that. We provide the following resources. Number one, we give you the textbook from grade R to grade 9 for every subject, but with the difference, it is totally Islamized. And that can be the prerogative. It's an add-on. Every community has the opportunity, or a parent, to school the child according to the religion, as long as you meet the basic requirements of CAPS of the curriculum. Like, for example, you cover all the concepts in maths and in science and so on, you are good enough. So alhamdulillah, and I'm going to talk to you just now about that. We went into partnership with a company called The Guardian Institute, which is actually the brainchild of Mr. Muhammad Varachia. He is a philanthropist from Gauteng, and he got a team together and he produced these textbooks which are completely Islamized. And I'm sure you want to ask me some questions later about that. Secondly, if you pick up the phone now for us and you want to get hold of the department, it's impossible to get anybody in the department to register your child. So we've taken that out. We've actually got into contact with a company. Actually, we are powered by them. They're called Habtech. So we've taken all the tuition centers and we offered, one, to provide them with the resources. And secondly, we will register every child legally, so they're on the department database. And thirdly, we are allowed as a resource provider to give the parent access to qualified teachers who will be able to unpack the syllabus. Because remember, you are dealing with a child, right? And for us, we must not forget to tell the public and our viewers that a child to be schooled to the age of 15, this is compulsory. Your child cannot leave the schooling system. It's illegal. I know a lot of people are doing it. As soon as their daughter grows to 10 or 11, they just keep out of school. So we've taken all that out. So we register the child. We provide the resources. We are providing you with a staff of experienced and qualified people who will unpack the syllabus to this child who's sitting at home alone here. So this is what we have to offer. And it's done at a real affordable price, because we know that these tuition centers are doing a fantastic job. They have a place in our community here, and we want them to continue, but we want them to do things the right way, because we don't want the department to come along closing all these institutions, and we have the solution. That's it for us.
We've just got about 2 minutes, MS. I just want you to explain again, the TGI system, and of course how this is going to obviously come into play with what you are trying to get into the institutions, MS. So we've got about 2 minutes, so I'm going to give you the time just to maybe explain the TGI system with regards to things.
Oh, I'm very happy to answer that question. Actually, that's $1 million question, because firstly, remember when we went to school, we were exposed to textbooks which were written by Maskell, Longman, Oxford. Now, after democracy, you have Via Africa, you have Shatta and Shutter. You have all these people But the textbooks actually had slants in them, especially if you look at the life orientation and so on here. They have nuances and so on that are totally un-Islamic. Like, for example, they have sections which relate to science and so on, which totally militate against what Islam teaches. Some ulama have looked at it as an act of, distancing yourself from the pales of Islam, because the books do not mention Allah anywhere. There is no religion in any of the books because it's secular. So TGI, the brainchild of Mr. Mohammed Varachia of More West, he uses the CSR, the corporate social responsibility. He got together a group of qualified educators and ulama, right, from the area, and these are reputable ulama and teachers under the helmship of two people, Soli Khan and his wife Shireen. Soli was an ex-principal at school, and Shireen was in accounting in the department. And for us, they came together and they started in 2021. And Alhamdulillah, I piloted the books for them here. Over 3 years, we went through phases. We produced grade R to grade 9, totally Islamized books. Right? I'll just give a quick example, take a few seconds. Like, for example, a giraffe, it's got a long neck, okay? Right? And we know it shows you tall, it eats up in the trees. We start off every lesson with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the lesson, there is actually reference made. Every lesson has a reference made to some Islamic concept. Like, for example, who gave this long neck to Allah, to the giraffe? Allah gave it, right? So everywhere we are interspersing, because remember, secular education, the government wants to take away religion from your child. And you may think this is an innocent child. Remember, this is a lovely, masoom, and innocent little child. And those underlying nuances in the curriculum, they eventually overtake, and they actually, it's called, we call it a type of social engineering. They would want to brainwash our children. Alhamdulillah, Mr. Farachia he's a visionary, he's forward-thinking. We are putting a stop to that. We're actually going back to basics. We want to bring Islam back into our children's lives so that the Sunnah and Quran is alive in our children, and that our personalities of our children are not affected by this fitna.
MS, I have to stop you there. We have to go for a break, because after this we're going to continue discussing homeschooling and whether this is, of course, the future for education going forward. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm still in conversation with Mahomed Ayeed Karodia, and we're discussing, of course, the future now of homeschooling. MS, I just wanted to get your vision when it comes to the future of homeschooling and education in general as Muslims in South Africa.
For us, whether you like it or not, it's actually the new normal. And I think, like we have upgrades in cell phones and so on. I mean, we're not going to buy an old cell phone, an Ericsson cell phone. So why not? There's an upgrade coming up in education. It gives us the right now to keep our children away from this type of peer pressure, bullying in schools. We're not talking about the mundane fact. Like, I mean, for us in Johannesburg, to negotiate through the traffic, to go to, let's say your child is in Johannesburg Muslim school, or at another school here, you got traffic, you got the cost of uniforms. The average fees today in, let's say, in ex-model C or Islamic schools is it starts around 35 to 40,000 rand. Education is expensive. It's uniforms, it's textbooks, it's the traffic, it's the lunch, it's the frustration. And the most important is, remember, in a school, you've got a particular child, right? This child comes from your home. Once the child gets into a target population of, let's say, 25 in a class, then you're talking about this child came first or 10th, or what are you doing? Immediately you're taking the child and you're labeling an innocent child. Once you put the child in a classroom, and unfortunately, I've looked, alhamdulillah, I've got my own laboratory. I do research. I'm a systems analyst as an academic doctor. And I still have to find there is no literature that shows you that socialization is going to be the greatest impact in school on a child. I mean, would a parent only send a child to school so that a child mixes with friends? And today, with what you have outside, remember, it's the textbooks firstly that are Islamophobic. They're not. They are secular in nature. you got a peer pressure, you got institutions there which have their own hidden curriculum here. So to keep your child safe, I am advocating, look, this is my opinion, but it's coming from a lot of psychologists and so on, that homeschooling is not only for the people who are in special education and need special educational needs, like those with ADD. It's preferable, it's a choice you should be taking for the safety and security of the welfare of your child. Can you imagine your child, a daughter or a son at 14? And in 14, I've been a principal for many years. When you're 14 years old, we call this a very, very impetuous time. It's very, very difficult. It's a watershed moment. You'll find the kid presenting with lots of issues. Children suffer from depression. And can you imagine all this plays out in a class in front of other people? Then at the interval break, and for us on a lighter note, sometimes we get parents, they irate, they come to school, they want to start by blaming the teachers first. I say, hold on, Mr. So-and-so, relax. Who sits next to your child in class? Do you know? No, I don't know. Who does the child sit with at interval break? Do you know? No, I don't know. I said, go and find out. Because Farhad, can you imagine how serious it is that your child at 14 is presenting, let's say, with some sexuality issue or some psychological issue, and this child is being counseled to next door by a 14-year-old who comes from a family where the parents are divorced, there's issues there, and this entire thing is transferring into your child. Keep your child safely at home. Your child has their own space. Today, the technology, and I'll talk about that just now, if you give me a few minutes here, we've gone actually way ahead of our time with technology. Can you imagine in the morning, alhamdulillah, at 8 o'clock, you open your laptop, you've got the teacher there in front of you presenting the lesson. Then you don't understand the lesson, no problem, it's pre-recorded, and you can go the next day and watch the maths lesson again. Then we've got a super team. Your child still doesn't understand. We'll give your child extra tuition on a Saturday. But we are dealing with an individual. And our classes are not more than between 15 to 20. So even using the modality of internet and live streaming, we still have hope that children who are different and unique in their abilities can be respected, and we can be accountable for every child. The homeschooling, for me, is the panacea today. It's actually, I think, not the new normal. It's the way to go.
But Dr. Karodia, what about embedding yourself in society? I get where you're coming from. Of course, you may encounter a potential norms that have been, of course, accepted now in society, and of course, it would be considered un-Islamic on a lot of occasions, and I understand exactly where you're coming from with regards to that. But are we not then not allowing our children to be in a space where they can understand what the world is? Of course, understanding the rights and the wrongs, but then it prepares them for adulthood in a much better way, because this now allows them to go out there and experience things. So how does one who brings that argument, how do you counter that?
For us, there's an old analogy of a ship that's built in a shipyard. And actually, the person, the shipbuilder, builds the ship not to keep it in the shipyard. He builds it so that it can go out there and face the stormy seas out there. For us, I believe personally that the parent should be responsible for the schooling of the child. The socializing can take place at various levels. Nobody's stopping the child from playing sport, visiting parents, starting with the grandparents here, going to old age homes. You can organize your own outreach. The parent, believe you me, in homeschooling actually bonds closer with a child than in a school, because they're taking a child and just lumping them onto the school here and expecting the school to do everything for you. It's not going to happen. It's actually, that's a recipe for disaster. So to answer your question for us, yes, I agree with you. There's actually, you got in career counseling here, I actually do that normally. We do job shadowing. Your child is welcome to do work experience during the holidays, can work down the road, can work for an uncle, can work for you in the shop, in the supermarket here. Nobody stops that. We are talking about the space of time that the child has for academic work. And what we've done is that, alhamdulillah, we've introduced physical education, we've introduced art, we've introduced conversational Arabic. And we've given our school starts at 8 o'clock, and let's say for a grade R, it ends at about 11 o'clock, and the grades 4 to 9 finish at 12:30. Giving the child adequate space and time to play and to engage with nature and so on. Being in a school crowded where there are viruses and so on here is not ideal, especially in today's climate where you need to know exactly where your child is, who the friends are, and what type of education this child is receiving. And please, for us, I'm a teacher, and I say this with no disrespect meant to anybody, but at many times, teachers have played a very, very influential role in the lives of their children. Sometimes it's actually this personality of this teacher rubs off so strongly on the child that the child actually doesn't listen to the parents.
MS, one final question. We just got about 3 minutes. You're going to speak on the technologies that are going to be afforded to those wanting to do a homeschool. Of course, you've mentioned at the break of COVID-19, you saw it even growing even further. So talk to us about how you would assist with regards to technology and allowing homeschooling to be a viable option for many parents for their children.
Alhamdulillah, and this is a fantastic example for us that you're using as a journalist. Always admire you. I watch your programs. You are talking to me. I'm sitting in Shelley Beach. I'm in Port Shepstone, and you are in Johannesburg in the studios. We are using the modality of Zoom, and we are having a wonderful chat. I can't see anything lost in our conversation. We are still robust. And listen, I'm listening to you, you're listening to me, and alhamdulillah, the whole world can listen to us tomorrow evening, inshallah. So again, for us, we are using technology. We use a learning management system. Some of them you come across, like, for example, it's called LARC and so on. So the child actually clicks on to our website. We've got a website. You click on, like normally what you do is you log in, you put in your username and your password, and it opens for you. It opens the lesson, it shows your portfolio, what your assignments are, some lessons that you may want to catch on. It has actually different levels for the parent. So the learning management system, in our case, is actually we use Moodle. And like we speak on Zoom, the person presents a live lesson. Let's say it's a math lesson at 8 o'clock in the morning for half an hour. There's interaction. The child who's sitting and watching the presenter can see the presenter, but they cannot see other children. So we do not give them an opportunity to get together to know who's in the classroom and so on. There is no intermingling, there's no mixing of boys and girls. The presenter, you for us at the moment have total control. In fact, if you want to, I know the studio can change the entire back here. Sometimes we do it as this thing, you can actually change my background. You can show like how you are sitting there with a city view. Likewise. So we've got a learning management system, and we've got the following. We have a face-to-face, that means it's live, real-time, a school that runs there according to periods and subjects and the teachers. Secondly, you have, it's called the platoon digital, where, for example, children who are doing HIFZ classes and the Alimas courses, and they are busy in the morning till 12, they can go home, have their lunch, have a little nap, and they can start in their own time at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, where we have the lessons scanned and they are taped and they can watch them later. And the last one, the type is self-driven, where you actually get the notes, but you sit on your own and study. But for us, most important is that we provide the textbooks. We have experienced teachers. I've got teachers on my crew who are 70 years old and they are fitter than me. And I will not exchange them for any money in the world. We've got wonderful heads of departments here, so we've got a lovely crew. Your child is registered formally on a database, and your child has access, because at the end of each month, we run a track. We can see exactly how your child is doing with the handwriting and so on.
MS,
sorry, sir.
I have to stop you there. Unfortunately, we have come towards the end. I wish you could take this conversation even further. Jazakallah so much for joining us here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So thank you very much, Rashtriya, and to your directors. Thank you very much.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. That's Mahomed Ayeed Karodia, the founder of the Institute of Alternative Development. He also serves as its CEO. After the break, don't go anywhere. I'll be chatting with Dr. Faisal Suleiman from SAMNET. Do stay tuned.